Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 200th episode of Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. It's an exciting evening for us. Wow, Dr. Kane, 200 episodes.
Yeah, I'm an old guy.
What were we thinking? So, just to give you all a little feedback, this has been an incredible journey for us. We started the podcast during the COVID 19 pandemic. It was an opportunity for us to respond to what we all remember as an urgent time in our lives. People were confused, they didn't know what to do, they didn't know who to turn to, perhaps for credible information. So, at the with the vision of Dr. Kane and the Northeast Florida Medical Society, and of course with our co-host, our technology expert, Tyrone Jackson, we came together and said, hey, let's create a platform, bring experts together. And I say experts very loosely because at the time, not a whole lot was known about COVID 19, other than a lot of people were being impacted by it. So we brought together who we thought were credible sources of information to help people navigate life at that time. Tonight, we're joined by several co-hosts, and we're going to introduce you to them. But I look at Mario DeCunto, for example, in being a leader in the Hispanic community and doing work with families, helping them to understand during that time it was hard for people. And since that time, as we say, post COVID, there's before COVID. I don't know about you, but that's how I say life before COVID and after COVID. We decided that this platform was a good opportunity for us to continue discussions about just things that are happening in life as life evolves relative to health, wealth, legal issues. And so we have been delighted to have brought so many different individuals from not only Jacksonville, but from around the country to join us as guests to share their knowledge, to impart their expertise to our audience. Of course, as co host, I couldn't do this alone. As I said, I do this week by week with none other than one of the most popular and notable primary care physicians here in Northeast Florida, and that is Dr. Rogers Kane. And I forgot to mention, we're broadcasting live and in person. Dr. Kane, is this our first episode in person?
This is our first episode in person because when we started in COVID, it was more of an isolationist environment at that time. Everyone was afraid to get into other space and face. A lot of this equipment was purchased just around that time, but because we wasn't sure what was going on and we felt the need to discuss things and talk with our community and make them aware of what any of the information that we as an organization, the Northeast Florida Medical Society, that we found out at that time, we wanted to share with the community. We're the Northeast Florida Medical Society, just briefly, is our local representation for the National Medical Association, okay, which is the oldest minority-owned black minority uh, physician uh, network since early 1912 or somewhere in there, very early. And we have a state component called the Florida State Medical Association. At that time, I have to give credit where credit is due. I had a discussion with, she was at that time, it was Senator Audra Gibson. She and I had conversations about what was going through the grapevine. Okay, what we heard in secret, what we heard in the underling of the potential disaster that we were facing. And we didn't feel, and we definitely, as far as the medical community is concerned, we didn't feel that we were being represented well in terms of whether it was diagnosing, whether it was testing, or whatever it needed to be. And we felt we needed to get the message out to the community at large, okay? In particular, the minority community, because they did not have, one, a voice, and two, we didn't feel that they had an informative source at that time. So we started Pause for the Truth. We came up, it was kind of an odd way we came up with the name. And I'm going, the name was like, look, we just, the three of us, along myself, Ms. Turner, and Tyrone Jackson, go-to tech guy, we all had a discussion and we wanted to tell the truth about what was going on as far as this pandemic was concerned. Okay, and so, and Ms. Turner probably give you a little bit more history on it, but at that time, that's what started us. We wanted to make sure that people were aware what the options are, what the particular pitfalls in terms of not at least being aware of how to prevent this killing entity, because that's pretty much what it was. It pretty much killed 1 million people. I don't care what anybody else says. Killed 1 million people here. We're not even talking about the rest of the world, just here in the United States. And while all this now was out there at that time about it's not that big of a deal, and other people were taking vaccinations when they became available, and other people were getting tested when it became available. Much in our community, it was not being advertised or not being that information was not being dispersed in the community. And we felt it was our duty to step up and do the things that need to be done. And with the help of my technology, our team, okay, Ms. Turner, uh, Mr. Jackson, with the help of our team, we slowly began to develop a process by which we could make our community aware. And we didn't care who it was in the community, but because what happened on the north side affected what happened on the east side and vice versa, what happened on the west side. This was a disease that knew no boundaries, knew nothing about zip codes. It could care less about cities. Okay, it was affecting a nation and affecting the world. And we felt we need to get that message out there. Subsequent to that, when things got kind of under wraps, I don't know if I'm stealing anything, but when things got kind of under wraps with that, we said, hey, this was a great source, a resource for information. Why should we let this go? We should not. And we felt we needed to continue to discuss with our community. The experts at the Northeast Florida Medical Society, they all chipped in between our infectious disease, our general surgeons, cardiologists. Everyone had, in primary care or obstetrics, gynecology, all of us had some role to play in disseminating the information to those people that we serve and served, past tense and present tense, um, that we serve. We felt the need to allow them to put out their expertise, and then we had the others in the community, much like our audience, that our panel that we have today, and a few people be drifting in and out, but Ms. Turner will introduce our panel. But much like to them, they had information they could share with our community, and this was a great resource by which to do it. It was very up to date. Previously, we had a paper that we was advertising, but that was too slow. So, to try to print a paper and get it out on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. But this was very inspirational in terms of what we needed to do for our community. And I'm happy from the day we started it, and even right now, I'm still happy about us putting this information out there. It may not be just COVID; it's about all kind of things that affect the community at large.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. And tonight, as we, each week, if you've been following us, we have a theme. Like, what's our theme? Our theme tonight is then, now, and next, the power of truth. Yes, pun intended, in building healthier communities. The unique part of this experience is that I have gotten into the habit of texting people, emailing, bumping into them in the street, getting referrals from others, and saying, hey, we want to talk about X next week. Who do you think we should invite? And so we've had the pleasure of meeting so many distinguished people, and we have with us a distinguished guest. Yes, I did say in person. Some of these folks have never seen us outside of the virtual space. And so this is their first time. They were like, oh, I didn't know you were that short. Like, okay.
Oh, that ugly.
Yeah, so they're seeing us for the first time in person, some of them. So I am going to start to my immediate right. And I tell you what, if you have not met Dr. Marcella Washington, are missing a treat. This lady is a walking encyclopedia. If you have not met her, she is absolutely amazing. I was introduced to her, and I see why and I'll just go ahead and give a plug by I still call him Senator Tony Hill. That's how I met Dr. Washington, and she has been a wealth of knowledge. Last year, when it was during the elections, Dr. Washington came on and shared her expertise. And if you don't know her, she is a former professor at the local college here, and I'm sure her experience is more extensive than that. But I'd like to welcome Dr. Washington. How are you doing this evening? Wonderful, wonderful. And next to Dr. Washington, I tell you what, if you're anywhere in Northeast Florida, everybody knows this guy, right? And Mr. Rodney Hurst, I have to say it, I might be over speaking myself, but unfortunately, as some people may think, even though you're telling the truth, people probably like you or they don't because you tell the truth. But I think you're amazing. And I went to the most amazing civil rights conference that you organized a couple of years ago. Has it been a couple of years or amazing? I'm waiting for that to happen again. But how are you doing, Mr. Rodney Hurst?
I'm great. Thanks for the invitation. And at my age, I've long since cared whether or not people like me or don't like me. It doesn't make any difference.
And that is the truth, right? That's my answer, my word for the night, the truth. And next to him, this guy, I tell you what, he is, if you want to know anything about anyone who's a champion for people getting medical care and health coverage, then you need to know Paul Sapia. Paul, I have known Paul for several years now, and he may be one of the folks who, in addition to our next guest, who wish I didn't have their cell phone number, but he's gotten used to me just texting him in the middle of the night, hey, Paul, what are you doing next week? So welcome, Paul Sapia. How are you this evening?
I'm well, thank you very much for having me. And glad to see you both in person again. So thank you.
Yeah, we had Paul on a couple of weeks ago actually talking about Telescope Health, so we're going to let him talk about that tonight. And someone else who really should be up here on the with Dr. Kane and I, because poor thing, we've called her so many times, but when it comes to understanding dietetics and nutrition, and oh my goodness, I have high blood pressure or diabetes or other diseases, Linda Brown is the go-to expert to help people navigate in that space. Our trusted, registered, licensed dietitian, Miss Linda Lockett Brown. How are you doing this evening, Linda?
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, thank you. We're so happy to have you in person. And this next guy, man, I tell you what, if you have not met him, he was a powerhouse when he came on the podcast last year and talking about it, just a wealth of knowledge with giving us facts about what was happening during the election. And he is just a champion with families, working with families here in our community. Mario DeCunto, how are you doing this evening, Mario?
I'm well, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Kane. Appreciate being here and the opportunity to be back.
And welcome, welcome. And last but certainly not least, my good friend, who poor thing, she's also someone I can just call, text at all times of day and night and said, Lorene, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? And so she is a public health expert, expert in so many different ways. And we tease with one another. She is just amazing, right? And she'll say that by herself in a joking way, of course. But everyone who meets Dr. Lorene Husband also thinks she is amazing. Welcome, Lorene. How are you doing this evening?
I'm just amazing.
So, as you can tell, we have a very distinguished group of panelists, and I want to start by asking each of you. You may not have been on the podcast during the 2021, our first year, or not even 2022. However, all of us experienced, and I remember, by the way, coming out of the pandemic, and I'm not asking you, any of you, to be COVID-19 experts, so you're off the hook. You can, good, she's not going to ask me about a statistics. But what I want to say to you is during that time, when after the pandemic, or when the world started opening up, I don't know how you felt, but I was so glad to see people, right? Like, it's so glad, I'm so happy to see you, because so many people lost their lives. And so the chair that used to be occupied by someone next to you may not be, that person may not be here anymore in many families across our communities. And so I'd like to ask you, when we talk about the theme of then, now, and next, the power of truth and building healthier communities, how have you felt navigating life in whatever your space is, personal or professionally, since COVID-19? And I'm going to start with Dr. Husband.
How have I felt? Could you ask that again?
Sure. How has, and you don't have to talk about your feelings, but how have you seen the community evolving since COVID-19? Do you see that there is a greater need in any particular space? You know, Lorena and I have discussions a lot about the social determinants of health. So regarding the social determinants of health, is there any part of it, maybe perhaps Paul, I look at you when you talk about folks navigating health, but is there any part of the determinants of health that you feel that, since the pandemic, those areas are more challenged? They probably were challenging before the pandemic, but since the pandemic.
It's really hard to quantify everything based on just COVID alone, because you also have to look at the political determinants of health. And for example, when you look at federal, state, and local policies, those really have been the things that are changing people's outcomes. My area that I really lean into is food security and food access. And I can tell you this, the numbers of people who are now standing in food lines are actually double what we saw during COVID. And that's only going to get worse. So I don't want to be the doomsayer as the first speaker, so I'm just going to lean into my colleagues. Things are getting really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. And Mario, you have this job and that job. What pays your bills. So I want to talk about that space because you work with families. Has it been more challenging? Your background is, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I work with Head Start. And for about 9 years, I was a mental health consultant for the Head Start program. And now I'm actually moved into community partnerships just because of all my work with the community stuff. But up until just very recently, I was working with them. In fact, I had to come out of my retirement from mental health, from my community partnership role, and go back into the mental health role because we had a family that only spoke Spanish. So I got a chance to work again with closely with my family, which is really where my heart's at. And my background, my cultural background is Mexican and Argentinian. And luckily that allows me to be able to communicate with their families. And that's a huge need. That's what you've been saying. So I guess wrapping it back up with your original question, COVID did a couple of things that helped mental health. It allowed it to become less stigma because everybody all of a sudden realized I can suffer from anxiety, I can be depressed. It's not, you don't have to be, quote unquote nuts to have to speak with a counselor. And it kind of lowered some barriers with the way that they accept building on a statewide level. There
want African American black folks to get it, because if we kept them from getting health care, they would die off because they were inferior to the white race. And that was back in the early 1912, whichever was first, Theodore or Franklin. I always get them mixed up.
There's a historian right there.
Theodore.
Theodore. Okay. All right. And that's what he, proposed. His brother later on came back, and the same thing occurred at that point, at that time. So eventually what they decided, and I'm just kind of doing a brief overview, eventually what they decided was that if we charge a 20% surtax, African Americans would not be able to afford it. And that would be the ability, the way to keep us from getting health care, and the thought that we would die off because we could not get health care like our Caucasian counterparts. It's kind of a brief overview. You can,
Well, look how brazen it is right now.
yes, even now.
How simple should it be for you to apply for and to get health care in the richest country in the world?
Should be that simple.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Nope.
But you jump through hoops with big pharma, big medical, big hospitals, and the capitalistic system of medicine, keeping poor folk from having the kinds of insurances they need to have just to survive.
And poor folks is a key word.
And that did not just happen. So my point is, we have some of these superficial conversations. We talk about food deserts. Not only do we have food desert in the north side, then you had a major
Pharmacy desert.
closed 5 pharmaceutical buildings,
Have zone one.
pharmacies on that side of town. So the question is why? Why is that not being monitored? Because that is the racist system of this country. And it's not a throwaway. Racism says you can control me financially, socially, politically. That's what white folks do to black folks in this country. Racism came out of slavery, the American Christian institution of slavery. And that's why we have this racism today that has permeated our very existence, and it is a disease that has no vaccine and no cure. And we need to work on it, but we are afraid to talk about it. Certainly, if this country, if white elected officials in the state of Florida and in Washington, D.C., and throughout the country can demonize diversity, equity, and inclusion, 3 really nice words. If you can demonize those 3 words, understand what racism is all about. They give less than a tinker's damn about you if your skin color is black. We need to learn how to start saying that and stop getting together, holding hands, and saying kumbaya. The only way that we deal with a lot of these issues is we discuss them. We can agree to disagree.
But
I
discussion.
say what I say not because I'm anti-white, but because I'm so pro-black. I know that there's a black face looking back at me in the mirror. But a lot of black folk go along to get along because that is their way of surviving. And white folk expect them to do that, to co-opt themselves and their integrity so they can survive. And we have in this country what Dr. Frederick Douglass names Dallas called big back Negro, whose back is so big until white folks ride it every day, who don't understand that they're black. My point in all of this is, until and unless we understand the need to discuss seriously white American Christian racism, we're going to continue to have these problems, and those problems are not going to go away. They are solvable, but they are not solvable if we don't admit that we got a problem that is based on the color of one's skin.
Quick add to your story about what happened in West Palm Beach. Yeah, it was West Palm Beach. You got Palm Beach, and you got the further cities over in Belgrade. But there was a time where coastal property was black property, because we'd be the first ones to face the hurricane, the first ones to face the flood from a hurricane. Not until they saw coastal property as being a beautiful addition to their financial status that we start seeing Caucasians move on the coast,
Hmm.
okay, and stealing property, like up in Hilton Head, South Carolina, or right here locally, American Beach is where they begin, with things that you're seeing there. So it's not just South, I'm from South Florida, so it's not just South Florida. It's it's throughout the country, but especially if you're looking at coastal property, it's right up and down the East Coast, where Black folks were the predominant owners of coastal properties, and then eventually they were taken from them because of the value was whatever the value high was created to make it more valuable to represent status among the white community, and then it was taken away from us.
If you're just tuning in, we're celebrating 200 episodes of Pause for the Truth. You know, a lot has happened in the past few years. We started the conversation this evening talking about COVID-19 because it was a time for us, and each of our panelists can share.
All right,
what-
fellas, gather around because I'm about to hit y'all with some real talk.
We have our mid-show moment, and then we're going to come back. And I want to bring Dr. Washington in because, as I said, she's a walking encyclopedia of history. She may not like being called that, but that's how I look at her, as being so knowledgeable. But Tyrone, take it away. And I'm talking about Tyrone Jackson, our technology wizard. Tyrone, show us what our mid-show moment is going to look like.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth Mid-Show Minute. Today is September 16th, 2025. Have you ever felt a memory that wasn't yours? A sorrow that seems older than your own bones? For Black Americans, this feeling isn't a ghost story. It's an inheritance. It is the emotional echo of a history that never truly ended. A trauma woven into the very fabric of our identity. It is a story about the weight of that inheritance, the pain of it, and the almost miraculous way it has been transformed into an unshakable strength. The trauma begins with a fracture, not a broken bone, but a broken world. The baseline of African American trauma was established in the calculated, systematic dehumanization of the Middle Passage and chattel slavery. It was an emotional trauma where families were treated like currency, an enduring mental trauma where one's thoughts and dreams were not their own, and a social trauma where a brutal new order was violently enforced. When emancipation came, the chains were removed, but the psychological prison remained, reinforced by the terror of the Ku Klux Klan and the suffocating laws of Jim Crow. The message was clear. You are free, but you are not equal or safe. And yet, from these deep wounds, a new kind of strength was born. This is the great, painful, beautiful paradox of Black history in America. The trauma was never just absorbed. It was transformed through a powerful alchemy of resilience. The blues, born from the sorrowful spirituals of the slave fields, became an art form that would define American music. The Great Migration was an act of collective agency as millions fled Southern terror to build vibrant new cultural centers like those of the Harlem Renaissance. From the Montgomery bus boycott to the Black Lives Matter movement, the response to systemic oppression has been a relentless push for justice, channeling pain into a purpose that demanded change. This is the legacy of rising, not just surviving, but actively remaking the world that tried to break you. But here is the truth that we must honor. Not everyone makes it. This transformation is not a magic trick. It is a grueling, exhausting process. For every person who rises, countless others carry the weight of that history like an anchor. This trauma is unique, a continuous and living thing passed down through generations. It is the cumulative weight of microaggressions, systemic barriers, and the ever-present knowledge that your skin color makes you a target. It manifests as chronic stress, hypertension, and a deep, abiding exhaustion. To expect everyone to simply get over it is to misunderstand the profound and lasting nature of the wound. For many, just getting through the day is its own monumental act of resilience. In the end, the story of Black America is a story of flight. Some days, that flight is a desperate struggle to stay above the crushing waves of history. But for others, over time, that struggle teaches them something more. They learn to catch the updrafts of their ancestors' dreams and to navigate the crosswinds of injustice. They learn the difference between just flying and truly soaring, taking in all the lessons, the pain, and the joy, and using it to climb higher, seeing the world not just for what it is, but for what it can become.
I can count on our technology expert, Tyrone Jackson, to come up with a nice little mid-show moment for us. But it was an opportunity for us to take a bottle of water or so we are going to resume our conversation. If you're just tuning in, we're celebrating tonight 200 episodes of Pause for the Truth podcast. I want to bring in our political scientist, who I have been naming her something else, but that's how I feel about her, right, as a historian, because she's a wealth of knowledge. But Dr. Washington, let me ask you a question. From a political science perspective, how does public trust or mistrust in government affect people's willingness to engage in health programs or follow medical guidance?
Very interesting question. First of all, I'm a teacher, okay, and I try to teach American government, and so I think first of all, Americans need to learn American government, and if they did, we may be in a better place. But I will say that there's no doubt about what Curtis had to say here, that, you know, we've codified racial discrimination in American government. It's in the Constitution, the Three-Fifths Compromise, the Slave Trade Compromise, you know, the idea of separate but equal. You know, all these laws written, and then the backlash came. Of course, we had the Civil Rights Act, and now we have another political backlash. And so we're seeing that happen. And the codification, I was actually writing the legislation, as the writer here mentioned, this whole anti-DEI thing, and that also woke is supposed to be something terrible, and it's been politicized. So I'll just say real quickly, I do a community effort on my own. I go out and talk to community groups that want to help me, and I explain government, the federal system, the Constitution, the Electoral College, primary system, general election, runoff election, unitary election, and the whole gamut. American government is extremely complicated, and therefore Americans who don't know about it can easily be persuaded that they don't need to know about it.
Little girls doing teaching them how to play softball or whatever. So we find what's important to us to teach, right? And to carry on that history or that expertise is so interesting. Teaching people about American government, that's not a conversation that people have. You know, once I left high school, for example, of course, I went to University of Florida, so I got a little bit when I first got there. But how often do you have that conversation beyond that? And now so many folk rely on Tyrone doesn't like when and I'm not talking down about social media, but I'm gonna say it. But so many people rely on social media for their knowledge, and it's not a credible place. I had a conversation with someone the other day who regretted getting the flu vaccine and the COVID-19 vaccine because they say, and I always, who are they? Right? Because they say, you know, they said it online that no, don't believe that. There are people, unfortunately, who are putting that misinformation about that. And Dr. Price, I want to ask you, I can only imagine when folks walk in your office and you're there to help them manage whatever disease they're having. How often are you faced with someone coming to you saying, I read online that, or somebody told me if I do this, I can do that, you know, that'll help me manage my disease. And you're like, yeah, that's why you ended up in my office beyond the primary care physician, right? But how has COVID-19 changed, or access to care changed? Has it changed at all as far as helping you to help care for your patients? And again, welcome tonight.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. But, you know, I have noticed a difference with COVID-19. People don't believe me. You know, they tell me Dr. Oz is their primary care doctor. You know, so it's very hard to convince them, you know, your mom and dad are in the ICU, intubated with COVID right now. No, they don't have COVID. They just have like some type of pneumonia, you know, because it doesn't exist. So it's hard to talk to people when the facts are different, you know, and they get their facts from different places. You know, it's hard. So they bring things to me and say, what about this? What about that? And I just say, I don't recommend this. This is what I recommend. And, you know, sometimes I get tired of arguing. I do. You know, right now I tell people it's time to get your flu vaccine. It's time to get your booster for COVID. And I get pushback. You know, and I just say, I can recommend it. There are choices, and there are consequences to choices. So it's up to you.
And I don't understand currently, the current recommendations. They are forcing physicians like myself and Dr. Price to write a prescription to get the COVID vaccine. But it's okay, you don't need a prescription to get the flu vaccine. I found this out about 3 weeks ago from a physician who was at the pharmacy trying to get their COVID vaccine. I happen to take care of them. Like I do many patients. And he called me and said, I need you to call me a prescription for a COVID vaccine. I'm going like, why? Okay. And he says, well, they now say I need a prescription to get the COVID vaccine.
Well, if you are 65, I got the COVID booster because it took a long time to even get to the state of Florida, based on Florida Surgeon General and the Secretary of HHS. But I got and I couldn't get the COVID booster at my doctor's office. I had to go to either Walgreens or Sam's, and I went to Sam's, but I did not need a 65 and over. I did not need a prescription. I walked in, 5 minutes, filled out the paperwork, got the shot, and was walking out.
This individual is 76, okay, and they required him. I mean, he called me on a Saturday, and I had to call in that vaccine.
Who required him to do that?
That particular pharmacy was CVS, okay, and he's not the only one that I've had to, you know, break my time away from family and whatever else because they were at the pharmacy. They were trying to get the COVID vaccine, and since I'm encouraging it so much, I'm going to step out whatever I'm doing and call that prescription in. It's just, it was ridiculous. I'm going,
Walgreens, Publix, and Sam's does not require a doctor's prescription.
for, are you trying to say maybe for the 65? Maybe.
Well, I mean, that's what I want. I may be one. So,
Right.
when I went to get my COVID booster,
And how long ago was that?
this is 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And no one said, you know, hey.
Maybe they hadn't gotten the memo yet because it was
But it was
about,
a long time before the booster was even available at these stores.
At these stores,
in the
period.
state of Florida.
No, say about a month ago, I'm pretty tight with the pharmacist in my neighborhood. And the booster was here. It was here. They
Right.
had it, but they were not
allowed to give it.
because of our Surgeon General,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But they had it, and at that time, they were trying to decide who could get it, who needed a prescription, who was gonna pay for it.
Right.
And I think now it's been open, so I'm not asking.
It's not as, right. But but the message got out is my point. The message got out to some of the providers, the pharmacists, that they needed prescriptions. And so they have not caught up with the age, you know, restrictions or non-restrictions, depending on which side of the coin you're on, with, you know, with what the state is saying, because it was such a mixed message and such a level of confusion that they just didn't know. And you should not have confusion about that kind of medical care. That just should be a straightforward decision to be made.
Paul, I want to ask you, and listening to that, and I'm calling on you, by the way, because your past experience includes working for insurance, right? How do we, as leaders, I call all of us leaders in the community, how do we help make sure that the community is aware, other than Pause for the Truth, of course, how do we let them know about Telescope Health? How do we let them understand how to navigate their insurance plans and just kind of share your thoughts on that?
So I'll clarify a little bit. So we're uninsured, right? So uninsured patients can see us for free through funding through the city of Jacksonville. So that's part of it. Now, a lot of awareness. I go to a lot of churches, a lot of community organizations, food pantries, you name it. We have a team that goes out, or I'll go out. I want to get the influential people in the community to talk about this, because it may be perceived one way if I'm talking about it, and other ways if other people are talking about it. So I want to continue to build trust in this, right? And this was created for a reason. Talking to the community to say we have to provide better access for people. The emergency room is costly, it's inefficient, and if you don't need to be there, then don't go there, right? Go to Dr. King, and others, right? And make sure that you're seen and somebody that gets to know you. The importance of having a primary care is so a great call from a woman that was down to her last diabetic needle, last 2 diabetic needles. And she could only find a box for $65 every place she called. She called our nurse navigator. We were able to get her to a place that she could get free diabetic needles or low cost diabetic needles. It's an emergency room visit, plus all that hassle of, or inefficiency or whatever it is about being, having a diabetic episode. And so it's really about information. So a lot of this, right, a lot of this is talking to people and getting to know people and really just understanding that we're all in this for the same thing. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be happy. We all want to have healthy food. Organic food is healthy, or healthy but expensive. So it's just having conversations and realizing that people are generally here for the right reason to help people out.
I have concerns about physicians' availability, period,
Yeah.
and within this administration, and what's going to be going on within the communities. There are not many sole practitioners. I'm one of the few that remains. There are not many out there in the community that remain that have the ability that serve the people at large and not necessarily the institutions at large. And of course the institutions have much more monies to be able to market, to make it look. We've been doing that in our offices for decades, for back as I can remember, that Ms. Jones come in, I need to know who Ms. Jones is. If I don't know, my office staff quickly reminds me who Ms. Jones is. And if they don't, Ms. Jones reminds me who Ms. Jones is. And but because of the atmosphere that's present in this country, as Mr. Hurst was saying, whereby we do not have access to health care, reasonable health care. I understand what you're doing, Paul, in your organization with Dr. Thompson, because we don't have access to reasonable health care. You guys can quickly be overwhelmed. I mean, to where you can only do so much, okay? The system has to change. Why do we have to create avenues by which we escape the system to be able to provide care, when the system itself should be allowing us to provide medical care to any and everybody that needs? Okay, we're not asking for it to be free. We're asking for it to be reasonable. We're paying for health care over. I'll be quite frank with you. We're paying for health care in Israel. Okay, they have free health care. The money's come from us. as Americans. They have free education. Their soldiers, retirements are based on our tax dollars, okay? And, and this was some of the other stuff that come in that I've been criticized for, but, the genocide that is occurring over in the Middle East is ridiculous. And we haven't had a program on that, but we're not far from doing it. My granddaughter got arrested just for protesting the genocide that was occurring. This was a year ago over at UNF. Put her in jail, okay? 18 years old, and all she was doing was sitting eating a sandwich, okay? And they locked her up and disappeared. I mean, I can give you a whole story, but she disappeared from our radar screen for about 12 hours trying to find her. And that was then. It's much worse now, okay? And simply because she did not want to see babies and women people being killed, period. And until we step up and step out as a community, which is what this podcast is all about. Yes, we started with COVID. Yes, we focus on healthcare, but just, the politics of medicine can affect everyone's healthcare. And we have to be cognizant of what those politics are. We have to be ready to step up. I got more years, Mr. Hurst said earlier, I got more years, definitely more years behind me than I got in front of. What do I have to lose? Okay, yeah, you can take some money from it, you can try to go after my wealth, but I'm concerned about my kids and grandkids. What kind of world am I going to leave for them? And I think any of us, at these ages that I'm looking at right now, should be looking at the same. What about your kids and your grandkids? We've had good lives, more or less, for those of us. I think most people here have had a pretty good life. Okay, I don't see any of it. I might have picked beans when I was younger, but I haven't had to pick them in the last 50, 60 years. Okay.
people in the community, put them on the board, and it let poor folk, low-income folk, prioritize where the money would be spent. And the elected officials said, oh no, we can't have that. You know, OEO was one of the greatest programs and divisions we had in this country, and that was eliminated because poor folk were making decisions, and they did not, elected officials did not want poor folk to continue to make
The
decisions. Head Start is still one of the greatest organizations that exists in this country today, because it is exactly what it is. It gives young kids a head start on their education.
Linda, I want to come back to you because we've talked, scattered around talking about food, but what I want to bring up with you is throughout my career, I've recognized, and my background is public health, I've recognized the importance of having a registered dietitian, because you can go and see Dr. Price, for example, or Dr. Kane, but if you're still eating stuff that you shouldn't eat, simply because you don't know, because it wasn't accessible. Healthy foods just were not accessible in your community. But talk about, and what I found when I've told people, just, your insurance plan includes your being able to see a registered dietitian. Is that a reality for most of your patients, Linda?
No, it's not. Medicare pays after you are diabetic. Medicare pays after you are at chronic kidney disease stage 3B, which means you're over halfway to dialysis. That's when they pay. There are 3 notable exceptions to that. I don't know if you want to name names, but there's a code for nutrition counseling, which means you don't have to have a disease. There are only 3 insurance companies that will pay for that code. So I have patients who understand the need, and they will pay out of pocket. So one of the things that I do with my pre-diabetes classes and with the diabetic education, and this is the pitch that I'm making in churches, if you get me 5 people that I can bill their insurance, anybody else can come. So that's kind of what I've established. I need 5 people to keep the lights on. So if I have 5 people that I can bill their insurance, the whole church can come.
Wow.
So that's the best I can do. But I hired a full-time person, and all she does all day long is call insurance companies and try to get pre-authorization. And in the next couple of months, I'm going to have to do the math. Is the money coming in justifying? Because I don't pay people minimum wage. That's against my values. You're going to spend the whole day with me. You're going to make enough money.
A living wage.
A living wage. And I've always done that. But I'm going to have to do the math. So that is the part that is disheartening, because I have people that want to come. They're motivated. And part of what got me to even being a registered dietitian in the first place was my father became diabetic. He was diagnosed when I was a little kid. And he came home, Daddy was 6 feet tall, and he came home with 1,200 calorie diet sheet. Well, you all know how that went. I got to drive on the highway for the first time, because when he passed out and fell off the machine, Mother didn't want to drive, and I said, I'll do it. But that was my introduction to what people don't know. And Daddy was a compliant patient. If he had the right information, he would have done it. It really, one of the things that bothers me a lot is, especially when I get the renal patients, if I had seen them 5 years earlier, they wouldn't be at the renal doctor's office. And that just bothers me. That just bothers me. And you know, people want to say, well, those people don't want to do this and those people don't want to do that. Who are those people? Who are those people? And so it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge, and Dr. King is helping me rework my business model. Because with the changes in healthcare, the old model is not going to work.
The ironicity in terms of them holding us accountable to the outcomes of patients. You know, after they've gotten sick, we're trying to do something before they get sick. Okay, if you allow us to do it, then you don't have to worry about what I did to this patient after they got sick. Okay, but that's not the way the funding model to this American economy works. Okay, you know, back with J. Paul Getty and the rest of those guys when they used hydrocarbons as the source of medical treatment, you know, and killed off the people on Titanic. But the which is truthful. I mean, people say what they want. The ironicity in terms of what Dr. Price had, the documentation she has to put forth to try to say, this is what I did to comply with what you guys want us to do. Or this is what I have to do before it gets to her, okay? And how this patient care needs to be handled and why it is, and why they will audit you if you did not fulfill the requirements that they have of you. But yet at the same time, I can't reach out to a very credible resource to help prevent these things from happening. Okay, even if they get to stage 3A of kidney disease, it's still difficult to get them to see a dietitian who may be able to take them back before you get to 3A, which is one of the more the turning points of the kidney, like she said, about halfway down the road when you get to 3B of becoming on dialysis and so on and so on. I can't even get that done because the patient, one, doesn't understand what it means. And they want me to wear all these hats, a dietitian, a pharmacist, a physician, a social worker, because I'm primary care. But you don't give me the tools and the resources that I need to take care of our people, okay? Any people. I'm not just saying, because this affects white, black, blue, green, yellow, because the people that don't have to eat the McDonald's or don't eat the McDonald's and the plastic associated with those foods of that nature, those guys are eating absolutely fine. They're not eating that McDonald's. They're not even eating that Panera or Chick-fil-A. None of these places are they eating. They're eating the fresh fruits and vegetables that many of us need to eat, but don't have access to it, or need to be counseled on what to eat, but don't have access to it.
So Dr. Price, this is the last question because it's almost at the end of the hour. I want to end with you and ask you, I remember when my dad was about to retire, he was ready to retire because he said it wasn't fun going to work anymore because things were changing too much. All the new rules, and it just wasn't fun anymore doing the job that he did. I'm not going to bash who he worked for. So I'm just going to ask you, just think back years ago when you decided to become a physician and you chose nephrology, for example. How has medicine changed for you? Do you feel more discouraged sometime because of the non-physicians who are making decisions about the way you treat your patients? I don't want you to lose any business, by the way. But do you see anything? Do you ever get discouraged and say, I've had enough? And now with the evolution of social media and Dr. Social Media, where people are getting advice from, and the distrust that they have in taking your advice to care for themselves. I know that's a loaded question, but I wanted to give you kind of the final thoughts, one of the final thoughts as we end tonight's discussion.
I'd like to say up until this year, I said if I had to do it all over again, I'd do the same thing. But in the past 6 to 12 months, I'm thinking maybe it's time for me to go because I'm tired. I'm tired, not of the patient, really, but of the insurance. You know, of
System.
the prior authorization, trying to get medicine for patients, and I can't get it, you know. I just get tired of that, you know, going through hoops, trying to do things. And like Dr. King said, I mean, there's medicines for cholesterol, but some of them you can't get until you have a heart attack, and then you can get it. So, you know, you can't practice preventive care. So it's just not set up that way, and I'm just tired.
She said something that a lot of physicians, that's one of the reasons people running around right now got 6 months waiting periods to see certain kind of physicians. COVID burned a lot of us out, but even after COVID, some physicians are doing, it's what she said, I'm tired. I mean, the driving force for me has been, and this is not one of these, I just don't want people to think that that's what we do. For myself, and Dr. Jones, and other physicians, mostly, you know, physicians on the north side, we've held on to keep from retiring because we wonder what's going to happen in Health Zone 1 if we're gone, okay? And we're trying to hang on as long as we can, but they make it so difficult. And some of the patients need to start taking in consideration the role that they play in making that happen. You know, you don't want to come and support those physicians who want to, or individuals like Linda who trying to keep the lights on just by taking care of you, just to help take care of you. But all you gotta do is spend a little money to get to see us, or spend some time to get to see us, or speak up on your behalf and on behalf of the community. You leave it on us to take the full burden of trying to provide health care to their community until you're the one that needs that health care. And then when you're the one that needs it, all of a sudden, why is it taking me so long to get my appointment with this rheumatologist who, you know, is 8 months down, neurologist, 6 months down before you can get to see him? So far, I've been lucky enough I hadn't had to, and that's mainly because of the connections I have. We haven't had to wait that kind of time period for nephrologists. But you just heard Dr. Price said she's tired. So if she disappears, that's one of my resources gone. Another nephrologist, another kidney doctor decides they want to call it quits. You know, the waiting time for these physicians going to be, to get to these physicians, are ridiculous. And we should criticize Canada about the type of medicine that they had. Oh, it might be a year before you see an orthopedics, you know, but it was free when you didn't get to see him. Well, you not only maybe a year before you get to see some of these specialists if we keep this up, but you're going to have to pay for it, okay? And an arm and a leg for orthopedics.
So, as we bring this special 200th episode of the Pause for the Truth podcast to a close, we just want to say, just really take a moment to say thank you to our listeners. We invited our special guest to join us here in the room, but we want to tell our faithful listeners who text me and say, what are y'all talking about tonight? I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. It's like, I want you to tune in regardless, right? But thank you to our faithful listeners who also tune in on a week by week. 200 episodes. That's 200 conversations, 200 opportunities to listen, learn, and grow together. What started in 2021 during one of the most uncertain times in our lives has become a trusted space for truth telling, healing, a whole lot of healing, by the way, and connection. Our theme tonight, Then, Now, and Next, the power of truth in building healthier communities, reminds us that every generation has a role in shaping what comes next. We've heard tonight from powerful voices. Dr. Price, a nephrologist, Dr. Washington, a political scientist, Mr. Hurst, who I call a civil rights advocate. I don't know if that's what he calls himself, but I also call him a historian. Paul Sapia, who has just been just a public health and health champion here in the community. Linda Brown, know your insurance plan, folks. Make sure that registered dietitian is on the panel. If it's not, advocate with your employer. Advocate with your insurance company. Ask the question. Mario DeCunto, who I hear his passion as a mental health expert. I think the most powerful thing you said tonight is the pandemic taught people to know that it's okay to seek help from a mental health professional. The amazing Lorene Husband, who is doing, and that's a joke if you heard the beginning of the podcast, who's doing an amazing job addressing food insecurity and so much here in our community. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Jacksonville Urban League for hosting us, for allowing us to host our 200th podcast celebration here at the Jacksonville Urban League. We're so grateful. To our panelists, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your heart. Again, to our listeners, viewers, and community partners, thank you for believing in this platform and continuing to walk this journey with us. And of course, our dream team, the behind the scenes guy that's been over here. We've been passing notes to one another. The technology wizard called Tyrone Jackson, who does an amazing job keeping us on the air week after week. And of course, I couldn't do this alone without Dr. Rogers Kane, who again is one of the most trusted primary care professionals here in Jacksonville. To our caterer, who is back in the back of the room, has served us an amazing meal tonight to bring this celebration all together. Please, 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 please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell everyone about Pause for the Truth. We had a multitude of things to talk about tonight. We have a multitude of things yet to talk about. Tune in for our 201st episode. I'm going to shut up and let my co-host have the final words.
The only thing I really want to get to is again, I want to thank Tyrone Jackson for his technical expertise. This is the first time we ever done a live broadcast, so we run into some issues. We went kind of silent to people that were listening. You guys didn't experience that, but there was a little bit of a downtime where the audience could not hear us. But what I do want them to know is that we still continue to record. And this is our first time having done this live. And so it takes a little bit of practice to find out where we had any missteps. And, of course, equipment, the wrong time we want to hiccup. I mean, it's when it hiccups, it's always the wrong time to hiccup. If it would have hiccuped up before we got on air, that's great. But we get hiccups. And so I want to apologize to the audience for those that missed it, missed some of the conversation, but it is on our website that you can go back and listen to every word that these very informative, intelligent guests that we have provided their insight to what we're trying to do. All of us, our guests, the Pause for the Truth, all of us are trying to do for our community. If they were not trying to do for their community, they wouldn't be here tonight. So I really want to thank you guys for coming, taking the time out away from your families, and being on the hunger circuit, trying to get something to eat at this point, this time of night. Too bad I didn't have any drinks for you.
So anyway, and by the way, last thought, because we do like to support local businesses, check out Island Tropics on 16th and Main Street for your next meal. You won't be disappointed. Thank you and have a good evening, and tune in next week for Pause for the Truth.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth, October 13th, 2025. This is our 200th episode. This is our mid-show minute. 200 episodes of truth, education, and community empowerment. That's not just a number, that's a movement. For 200 episodes, Pause for the Truth has been more than just a podcast. We've been your community classroom, bringing you subject matter experts on the topics that matter most. Health, legal rights, social justice. Our vision is simple but powerful. A community where everyone is fully aware of the circumstances that could impact their ability to thrive. We don't just talk, we educate. We don't just inform, we empower. Every episode features real experts sharing real knowledge that you can use in your daily life. because we believe that when our community is informed, our community is unstoppable. Join us as we continue this journey of education, awareness, and community strength. Prepare to be informed.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right, appreciate you very
I'm
much.
very flexible for my age.
It's always good to see you.
At 25, you should be.
Thank you all so much, we really appreciate it.
So really, it's
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You got cards? We want to keep the minutes.
I got it. So that's my show. It's not Kidney Foundation, but.
Just FYI.
Okay.
Good meeting you. Good meeting you too. I'm just a friend. So. Good meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
All right.
I hope I got 81. I hope I got.
Please make sure you all get your information. I just.
I started when I got here 2 years ago. And then I laid on.
What does that mean?
That works.
We appreciate you spending time with us on Pause for the Truth. Ms. Jocelyn Turner and Dr. Rogers Kane are grateful for your support. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, catch us live on Twitch, and most importantly, subscribe on YouTube. A big shout out to Tyrone Jackson at Call Tyrone IT Services for keeping us connected. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more enlightening discussions. Thanks, and see you next week.